Go.
Hey everyone, it's Miss Helen. Welcome to Texas on Tap. We're going to talk about some radio releases for this week. There's been a ton of them, but I've got three in particular I want to talk about. And then coming up after this, a great interview with Zac Wilkerson. He's got some phenomenal music and also just a good visit talking about his background and how he got into music. I think you're really going to enjoy that one. So now let's kick off things with a radio release I am super duper excited about. Hayden Baker has a radio release and it's called Drinkin' Buddy. It's like, let's get to Drinkin' Buddy. But first of all, I love the whole concept, how it starts out. It starts out with basically there's an open position and you can apply for it to be a drinking buddy. It talks about starting right now. There's benefits like you get some tequila, you're going to have some whiskey. But Let's Get to Drinking Buddy is a good solid song from Hayden, as all of his songs are. And of course, he has to reference Shiner Light. That's a whole nother situation with Hayden. But Shiner Light's in there. But if you don't want to have to apply for the job, no need to apply. If you can like down a case of Shiner Light, then you're automatically hired. So let's get the Drinking Buddy. I think that's going to be like everyone's kind of really favorite go-to summer song. So good job from Hayden Baker. Make sure you check that one out. Again, it's called Drinking Buddy. And then my buddy, John Swatner, has done a phenomenal job with just a song, like I like to say. It's like, okay, you can just go ahead and put the bow on it. This package is done. Absolutely gorgeous song. It's called Red, White, and Blue Eyes. It makes reference to home in the American heartland. She wears that cross around her neck. And also, it talks about her lighting me up like the 4th of July with those red, white, and blue eyes. So you have to check that one out. Just nice and smooth. The intro really takes you into the whole feeling of what the song is going to be about as you go into it. And I did notice that there's a co-writer on there, Brett Eldridge. It kind of caught my eye. I like to look at who the songwriters are, as many of you know. And then another one that gets you started right at the intro. It's a cold intro. It's a cover song of Eddie Raven's I Got Mexico. And the name of the group is Soul Circus Cowboys, featuring Eddie Raven in the single I Got Mexico. And I have to tell you, it got my attention, as I said immediately in the intro, but just because Eddie Raven, I mean, like I was a super huge fan of Eddie Raven's music, and I'll tell a story about how I think I have a love for boots because of Eddie Raven. But you have to check this one out because the harmony is outstanding. And not only that, it is a turn it up loud and sing along song. And I almost got caught a few minutes ago when I was previewing it again before this. I was singing loud. So, and that's not a good thing when I sing loud. Anyway, so yeah, check that one out. Also, the Eddie Raven story. All right. So back, everyone knows I grew up in Sealy, small town. And there was a time where Eddie Raven came and he actually played in our little downtown area. And this was probably, I guess, maybe late junior high, early high school for me. And I remember him just being his stature and just the way he came off the bus. He was coming off his bus and he had those big high boots on that he likes to wear. I swear, I to this day I still remember that man stepping down those steps of that bus with those boots on. I think that's where my love of boots actually probably started. So looking at some other releases, David Adam Burns has an absolutely gorgeous song out. It's called The Last Cowboy Standing. That's a must hear. Turnpike Troubadours have a new radio release. Ruby Ann, Billy Joe Jones have follow up to her number one. She has a new radio release called Flame. It's a good one. Girls, you're really gonna like that one. Another one that has caught my ear, Nash Stanley, Let Them Talk. That's another good one. And Pat Waters, Love You Back to Texas, another good one as well. That's just to name a few. There's a lot out to Texas country radio. So make sure you check those out. We're rocking along. Speaking of radio, Texas Toast Radio is getting up and going. I had my first event this past weekend. Programming is up, music is up, and I'm to the point to where I'm going to be getting ready to do some actual live shows. Yes, if you've been listening, then you know it's just kind of like I like to call it jukebox right now. Working on some more liners and just some more little tweaks to things, and then I'll have some guests coming in. We're going to talk a lot of fishing, a lot of my community here in Matagorda. We are a tourist town, so we do cover a lot of people that come here to visit. So if you're like even inland, like Austin area, or if you're Dallas area, Huntsville, even in our region, like Sealy, Belleville, Columbus, Brenham, like coming from those areas, make sure you tune into Texas Toast Radio as you're coming in to do your fishing and all beaching and all that fun stuff, because we'll have some great music, great interviews with artists, as well as fishing guides from the area. We'll keep you updated on what's going on with the fish, like I like to do usually anyway. But this will be like more official. It's really cool because on the podcast, we do the in-depth interviews interviews, and now we can spin the music and get the music out there. And I just think I'm just really excited about that and get everyone educated to all these artists that we talk about. It's just like going down a whole different rabbit hole, something totally different. And people are getting me now. Remember, I told you I used to scare people, especially in my community. Like you start bringing up Texas music and Texas artists, and like I'm just like going to go on not a rant, but I'll probably have to eventually just like excuse myself, and they have to tell me just like this to shut it up. Anyway, so yeah, fun stuff going on. Check out texastoastradio.com and download us on the Live 365 app and search for Texas Toast Radio. So cool. All right, good stuff coming up. Zac Wilkerson's coming up next. We got some other guests lined up here on the podcast. Get out and see a Texas country show this weekend. There's lots in the area, and we'll keep keeping up with the music and keeping you updated as well, right here at the Texas Toast Podcast. Have you ever wondered how artists like Treaty Oak Revival, Red Clay Strays, and Aaron Watson maintain the high quality and high demand for their merchandise? CH Lone Star Promo is the answer. Created in Texas to serve Texas artists, and they're currently offering 15% off on all merch orders from musicians. Visit chlonestarpromo.com to get started and tell them Texas Toast sent you.
I was reading the other day that it takes at least $1 million to break an artist. That's a ton of change, and it can feel overwhelming. But with social media leveling the playing field, you just need an effective strategy to release your music. Check out Release Rocket to ensure your single does not die after release day. You've already put time, effort, and tons of money into writing and recording your album. Let the guys at Release Rocket keep your new release alive.
Cheers, everyone. It's the Texas Toast Podcast welcoming Zac Wilkerson for the first time to the podcast. So cheers to you, Zac. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us. And you have such an interesting story, and your music. It's just so soulful. It's just got a little folk going to it. And it's just one of those, when you start getting into your music library, you're just down that rabbit hole for a long time. That's what happened to me. And so I like your description. You're a soulful rocker from the country.
That's right. Yeah.
And then it's so apparent. You just click on your songs, that's what you're going to get. So you're from Amarillo, correct?
Well, I married an Amarillo girl.
Okay.
And we stayed in Amarillo for a long time, and that's where we lived when I started kind of playing music. So I guess I came on the scene when I lived in Amarillo. So kind of everyone still connects me to Amarillo, which I'm fine with. I love that place. So,
Yes.
but I was born in Oklahoma, actually, in a little bitty town called Buffalo, Oklahoma, which is up by Woodward. It's very tiny, obviously. I think there's less than like 3,000 people in the whole county, in Harper County. So that's where I was born. That's where I kind of started, I started singing when I was 4 in church and stuff. So music really started, I guess, in Buffalo. And then we moved a little bit. We moved to Nebraska when I was 12. And then we stayed there until right around my 16th birthday. We moved to Sunray, Texas. That's where I graduated high school. And then I went to school at Oklahoma Baptist in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. I went there. I went to Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee for a little while. And then I went to West Texas A&M University in Canyon, Texas for a little while. I just kind of moved around. And then I met my wife. And then, we lived in Amarillo and kind of stayed there for a long time. And then when I started playing music, we were in kind of a different chapter of our lives. Her career took us out of town, and we lived in Killeen for a few years, and now we're in Little Elm, Texas. We've been here for I think going on 8 years now. So
wow. Where exactly is Little Elm? That's one I haven't heard of.
Okay, Little Elm is well, you know where Frisco is.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Okay.
It butts up right to the west side of Frisco. So we're between Frisco and Lake Louisville.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So I want to hear about, so you, I noticed in 2011, I noticed on your bio, like the whole thing kind of kicked off with the blue light. You were, I want to hear the story about how they tricked you into entering the singer-songwriter contest. First of all, that kind of intrigued me. So how did that come about?
Well, I have to back up a little bit and tell you more of the story. I worked as a worship pastor for over a decade, and I was a full-time music pastor. And a lot of the guys that I played with in my bands, because we were, I guess what you'd call like contemporary or modern type music. So, we
Hmm.
had real drums on stage and real amplifiers on
Yes.
stage type church.
That's how my church
So
was.
yeah, right.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
so a lot of the guys that played in my band, they were gigging musicians, and they played in bar bands and country bands and stuff. And one summer, right around, it was for 4th of July, and well, this guy named Aaron Balderas, who played bass for me at the time at the church, he said, "Hey, this country band I play with, we need a lead guitar player for this big 4th of July show that we picked up. Our guitar player can't make it. We need someone to fill in. Would you come help?" So I said, "Sure." And I learned that stuff. After I played that show with that band, uh, they asked me to kind of stick around and keep playing guitar and keep singing background vocals. And so I did that for a few months. All the while, I was still doing church music stuff. So
Yes.
uh, services Saturday and a couple on Sunday, and then somehow I would sneak a show in between the Saturday night service and the Sunday morning service. We were doing stuff like that. And then one night, my friend Chancey Burnson, whose band it was in Amarillo, he and I had talked about songwriting a lot. And then we were playing at the Golden Light, and it was kind of, well, it was a big surprise to me because he and I had talked about songwriting a lot, but we hadn't really like traded songs or swapped songs. So he
Okay.
didn't really, we talked about it at length, but not really played each other, played my songs for him before. Well, in the middle of this show, he said, "Folks, we got a treat for you. Zach's going to play some of his songs." And he handed me his acoustic guitar and he walked off the stage. And so I played, I ended up playing 3 songs that night. And after that, Casey Berry came up, and well, I gotta tell you about why he handed me the guitar and walked off. He told me after the show that he had to pee so bad he didn't know what to do. So he just decided to take a break right then, and I was gonna play for him.
Oh,
And so that's
when when Mother Nature calls.
hey, I guess I'm thankful for that little potty break because it
Yeah,
you
for
know it
sure.
it led to me meeting Casey Berry, and Casey found out I was a songwriter, and he I'd known Casey for a few years before that, and then we became friends. And then one night he called me up and said, "Hey, I want you to go to this open mic in Lubbock. It's no big, no pressure, no big deal. I think it'd be good for you to go and get your songs out in front of other songwriters and get them out in public."
Yes.
Because I was still working full time at the church at this time. I I I hadn't really started to pursue my own songs, if that makes sense. I started writing in '93, and I had just notebooks full of songs that I never shared with anybody.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
went down to this open mic, you know, open mic, no pressure, no big deal. It was one of the qualifying rounds for the Blue Light Songwriter Contest, and I qualified that night, and then I ended up winning in the contest. And that was the last year that the prize for winning the Blue Light was a set at Larry Joe Taylor's. So
Right.
in April 2012, I played a set at Larry Joe Taylor's. Just played a set of my own songs, and then, well, I won the contest in November of 2011, and then the few months between November and April, things kind of started moving a little bit quicker than I expected. Some
I bet it
shows,
did.
some
Uh-huh.
shows started coming in, doing little radio spots, things like that. Uh, Long story short, I played at Larry Joe Taylor's in April 2012, and then I quit my last like real job, I guess, in last week of September 2012. And I've just been doing this since, you know what I mean?
Well,
So
yes, and it reflects in your gigantic music library, which is so enjoyable. So 2014 was actually your debut self-titled album that was put out.
yeah.
So what was that like for you jumping into that, going from this story is a perfect segue, going from how you got to where you got to that point. What was that like actually releasing like your first album?
Well, it was nuts, you know. I had, like I said, I had all these songs. I had a huge notebook book of songs that I was really just sitting on. I because I didn't, well, my focus and my priority was kind of just doing the church thing. And so this whole
Yes.
idea of like making a record and playing shows, that was still fairly uh it was a fairly novel idea still at that point because we didn't know what was going to happen. Um, but when I decided I wanted to make a record, you know, really the only person I really wanted to work with as far as a producer was Walt Wilkins. And so
Right, right.
I
Mhm.
had some mutual friends with Walt. Nick Verzosa introduced me to Walt, um, but then also Courtney Patton and Larry Hooper. Those folks they helped me open the door to get to Walt. And then man, we made that first record in the summer of 14. It was incredible, lots of moments when I had to pinch myself because that first record, we made it with Walt and the Mysticeros. Uh, it's really a Walt and Mysticeros record, and I'm just singing on it, you know? So something like that, that's a huge privilege and a boost, you know? Uh, I would say it definitely was an incredible transition out of, kind of like I tell people, kind of like my previous life, getting to make a record with Walt at and Ron Flint at Jumping Dog in Austin.
It's
Uh,
amazing, amazing.
yeah, amazing guys, amazing, just to have all the Mr. Carols on that first record and just meet all those amazing people. It was
Hmm.
such I have to tell you, it's really when I look at the path of my career as a songwriter, that was a huge crossroads. And Walt taking the time, to kind of take me under his wing. It took us a few weeks. We did a couple days, a few weeks in a row at the studio to make this record. Um, and each night, Walt would take me to the shows that he had to play afterwards whenever we were done with the session. So we would go to the studio all day,
Wow.
and then Walt and I would jump in his truck and we would just drive, Fredericksburg, fly back to downtown Austin, whatever, try to get someplace. We'd go play these little shows together. And it really was kind of my uh I don't know, like my kind of like my what's the word? My introduction to the scene. He
Yes.
he brought me to all these venues. He introduced me to his fans, and him bringing me on the scene and saying, "Hey, this is a songwriter. Let's listen." It really changed a lot of my path. Uh, I think a lot of, especially as a songwriter, one thing you really want to, I think, for me at least, one thing you're really hoping for is, I want some legitimacy here.
Hmm.
You realize, you find out after a while, it's not that hard to write some songs. And the hard part is writing some really great songs. Uh, and the kind of songs that other songwriters, other artists, will pay attention to that might,
Correct, correct.
that might
Yes.
make their ears perk up. That's a huge compliment to me is when another, like a peer or a colleague of mine says, "Man, I like that song," you know, and having someone like Walt to bring me out at the very beginning to say, "Hey, listen to this," that was it's a huge boost. It's one that I think I'm still reaping the benefits from all these years later. So
Hmm.
I can't thank Walt enough for making that first record, you know.
Yes. Well, and then also now he produced your Dust Bowl also, right? That
That's
album
correct.
that came out. Yes.
Yeah.
So you still are y'all still working together because you just released a new album in February.
Yes. Yeah, we still work together every once in a while. I like to try a lot of new things. One thing that I'm really blessed with is that I have so many opportunities uh, to really kind of work anywhere I want. I work at a lot of different studios. I made those first two records at Jumping Dog in Austin. I made the next two, Evergreen and Mud and Sunshine. Mud and Sunshine
Mm-hmm.
is my most recent. I made those both at Yellow Dog, uh, which at the time was in Wimberley. Um, and Mud and Sunshine, we had that one mastered at Abbey Road Studios in London. So things like that are, you know, getting to work with a lot of studios. It's a huge privilege. It's funny because I want to make another record right now, and it's we're kind of we have an embarrassment of riches. There's so many different places we could go, so many different people we could work with. Sometimes I get analysis paralysis because I want I want to go play at all those studios. I want to work with
Uh-huh.
all of those people. So it's hard sometimes, I don't know, finally making a decision because you just want all of it. You know what I mean? At least I do. I
Right.
have a hard
Well,
time. I want to do it all.
yes, we have and we had, and that's the thing, all of it, and talking about all the studios and all that we have in Texas country music and the industry in Texas, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yes.
not just what we have here in Texas, but uh Texas is interesting. Texas has roots all over the country. So there's studios
Yes, it
in
does.
Nashville,
Yes, it does.
there's studios in Oklahoma. I've already talked to a couple studios. There's one in Arizona, one in Colorado.
Louisiana also.
Yeah, and they
Yes.
all that's it's still what's funny is it's still Texas people. It's still all the
Yes.
people we work with all the time. So it really becomes a small world. You realize how connected this web is.
So connected.
Yeah.
Absolutely so connected. Yes.
I think it's one of the things that makes our little pocket of the industry so unique is that connection. How everybody really is kind of linked to other people by very few degrees, if you really think about it. I've been fortunate to play music at other parts of the country, and I get into the very surface level of some other quote scenes or whatever. And one thing that's interesting about Texas is that we really do all work with each other, know each other.
Yes.
That sequestered songwriters. I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember that, but
Yes, I
you
do.
know,
Yes, yes, yes.
there's still a sequestered songwriters little bit of a text thread that pops up every once in a while, and I'll look away from my phone for a few minutes
Mhm.
and look back and I'll have 50 texts. And it's because the sequestered songwriters group, someone had, it was somebody's birthday or
Right,
someone
right.
released a new single or someone had a baby, whatever. But we all are still like, hey, good, congratulations, we're proud of you, good job, all those things. Uh, the connection is probably it's one of my favorite things about being in Texas and playing music here. You know,
Well,
one
yes.
of the reasons I stick around here.
Yes, yes. And that brings me to 2 points. Number one, what you just said. But number two, coming from a background of radio, that's
Mm,
what attracted me to making sure that we programmed our Texas artists and our Texas music. And it's just been a thrill to watch it grow since the late 90s and then going
yeah,
into the 2000s and now here with the podcast and then moving on to another project I'm working on. But everyone's like family so much. And one of my other questions was when I was going through your music, now I know how rooted you are because of Walt Wilkins. Because my question was, well, with the style of music that Zac has, it could go in so many different directions, but you've been so true to Texas. I could tell with what I was reading and in my research.
mm,
So it all comes together now for me. Like now I get why you are where you are. And then releasing the album in February. One other question I have is also you had 21 songs on there,
yeah.
which by the way, the name of it's Mud and Sunshine. It's so good. Dude, everybody, I
Thank you.
enjoyed it so much. But that was a lot of work. A lot of
It
work, I'm
is.
sure.
It took
Yeah.
us a long time. It took about 2 years to record all that and just get everything where we wanted it. The record, I guess if you want, it's a concept album, if you really want to say it that
Mm.
way. Um, I'm to this point in my career where I really get to do whatever I want, and I can just have fun sometimes. And this record was a huge departure from really anything else I've done. Even just the way we recorded it was weird. I took all the melody instruments in, and we recorded all the melodies on the mud half. We recorded that first,
Mhm.
and then we brought the back line, which is the bass and the drums. We brought that in after and had them work around the melodies. And so Mud and Sunshine is a very it's very melodic. It's more about the notes and the words than necessarily the groove or the beat,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
very different than the rest of my songs. They're
But
very
it works. It's so
thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I I was my idea was if you got transported to a parallel universe, okay, uh in like uh the mid to late 70s, and
Mhm.
you're driving around in your old muscle car and you're listening to the AM radio.
So true. So
So
true.
that's I kind of hope that Mud and Sunshine was like it's just an hour of driving around in this parallel universe, right? And so those first 10 tracks, that's Sunshine. That's all
Mhm.
just rock, groove bass type stuff. And then the last the last half of it is Mud. And actually Mud is split between into two projects. There's Mud, which is the first six songs, which are kind of like a 70s songwriter type feel. Jim Croce, James Taylor. I grew up on those guys, so I wanted to
Mhm.
tip a hat to those guys. And then the last five songs are they're kind of cowboy songs. They're like my version of cowboy songs. That's called Feedlot Cowboys, those last five songs. So there's three projects on one big record, you know.
Yes.
Um, it,
Genius. Genius,
well,
I tell
I,
you.
I
A
hope you
lot of
like it.
work, but genius. Yes, it is.
It was a lot of fun to make. I had such I have such a cool um group of friends that I get to play music with. My little community is so neat. We had Johnny Keys from Uncle Lucius. He plays all
Oh,
over the
wow.
record. Cody Braun. Cody played all
Mm.
over the Mud half of the record, so he's on Mud and Feedlot Cowboy. Rio Tripiano from Copper Chief. He played some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he
That's
played some
cool. I love
stuff.
Rio. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's
I
my
love him.
that's my
Yes.
bro,
I've known
man.
him. Yes, yes.
He's my
So
homeboy.
talented. He's so talented.
Yeah, he's one of the most talented people I know. He really is. He's incredibly talented. I think it's incredible to say, but someone like Rio, his personality often outshines his talent, which, if you know how talented he is an amazing thing to say. That's a pretty big
Yes.
personality. But
Right.
so we had Rio. We did it at Yellow Dog. Had Dave Percival. Um, he mixed and engineered some things. Adam Oder, Casey Johns, and of course Sean McGee from Abbey Road Studios. He mastered the entire record. So you know, like I said, I'm in this amazing spot where I get to do kind of whatever I want, and I can handpick really the coolest people I can find to come and play on it and stuff. Uh, it's interesting because, like I said, I'm wanting to make a new record right now, and it's almost interesting because it's like, well, what do we do now? You know, honestly, getting to work with Abbey Road was a really big milestone for me as a musician. I remember being a kid, listening to Beatles records, reading the back sleeve, and seeing Abbey Road and thinking, man,
Right.
if I used to think if you get to work at Abbey Road, then you must be the very top of the pile in the world of musicians.
Hmm.
And then and now that I've worked with Abbey Road, it's kind of like, wow, okay, I guess we just keep going. What do we do now? So,
Yeah. What's next?
well, what's next is we've got a whole lot of songs. I was in a song club. I started in this song club in October of 2020, kind of during COVID, and the song club is really just a bunch of songwriters. We get a prompt on like a Thursday at noon, and then you have to reply to the group Wednesday by midnight with a complete song. Completely type. You type
Right.
out the lyrics, and you have to make. I usually just do a voice memo on my phone, but you have
Mhm.
to include even an audio, and then you have to get that back to the group. There's usually 10 or 12 of us, but I did that every week for 2 years, and so we got a lot of songs out of
Dang.
that.
Oh, I can only
Uh,
imagine.
Johnny Keys was also in that group, which I don't think a lot of people know. John Grossman is uh, an incredible songwriter. He's got a couple solo projects out under the name Sleepy John that are incredible. But towards the end of that group, I made the mistake of turning in two songs because I was efficient that week, I guess. I got two songs written, and Johnny got a hold of me pretty quick, and he said, "Well, I saw that you submitted two this week. I'm in another group. Why don't you join that songwriter group?" So for the last 4 or 5 months, I was writing two songs every week. So now we had 130 songs just in this notebook that I've just been kind of combing through and like trying to pick them out and group them together. And that's really like most of Mud and Sunshine is from the song club. I think there's only one song that really had kind of was around before the song club started, but everything else is
Mhm.
from that club. And now, like I said, I put out 21 songs from
Correct.
that folder, but I still have 110 songs in the folder now. So now it's just a
Oh,
process of trying to get as many records made as quick as possible. Um, but again, then I get analysis paralysis. I got 110 songs. Which one's first? You start.
dang.
I think we've got it narrowed down. This next record I'm gonna make is gonna be. Um, I think it's gonna be a little bit of a throwback record for me. Uh, it'll be a lot more like that first EP. Uh, you know, Poor Man Blues, Muddy Waters, Middle
Mhm.
of the Night. Uh, I have lots of songs that fit really into kind of that feel. So that's, I think, definitely the next way we're going to go. But I also really like this idea of doing double records, just throwing lots
Yes.
of songs at a time. So I'm toying with doing that again,
Hmm.
doing a whole nother double record right after this one. So, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Yeah.
uh there's so many options and opportunities, like we said. You never know what's going to come up. So there's also, it's interesting when you write that many songs. You have some, I think, I think word gets out, and I've already had some people kind of talk to me about maybe, you know, farming out some of my songs, letting some other people cut some of mine. That's
That
something
was
I've
a
always,
question I had. I had a question. I
yeah,
was going to ask you that. Yes.
it's something that's come up. I've had a couple close calls before, where I would have had some cuts that definitely would have uh brought some attention and made some more things happen. But you know how it works in the music business, there's a whole lot of close. So
Mhm. Yes.
it's not something I've ever closed before, but I would definitely love to do it, you know. Um, it's also interesting because out of Mud and Sunshine, during that process of making my big record, which I've self-produced my last two records. I kind of just grab a big team and find a nice facility, and then we just throw ourselves at the songs.
Hmm.
And really Walt Wilkins, Ron Flint, and I could definitely say, people like Adam Oder and Dave Percival. Uh, those guys are incredible teachers. So I learned so much making records with them. And now it's kind of I haven't worked with producers in a while because I kind of am my own producer.
Right,
Um,
right.
and now things are moving towards me producing other people, which is I'm really excited about those things. Again, there's some of those conversations come up, and there's one or two that are kind of hanging out in the wind right now. We'll see how things work out later, but um, producing other people is something I've always enjoyed doing. You know,
Hmm.
I have a co-producer credit on Midnight River Choir's most recent record, just because I've
Cool.
hang out with those guys for so long.
Mhm.
But um, yeah, being in the studio is one of those things that never feels like work to me. So I like to be in the studio probably more than is
It's just
beneficial.
so yeah, so natural for you to be in the studio, and as we've been visiting and going through the interview here and thinking about how, you talk about how, you were so encouraged by Walt and you've had all these people around you. Do you do that a lot with some of our new, like we've just got a whole
Yeah,
plethora of talent coming up in our Texas industry. So are
yeah.
you tuning in, listening to some of that talent, or do you ever get a chance to talk to them at shows or just,
I really try to. One thing that I've done in the past, because the blue light open mic was that was a life-changing thing for me. We had a blue light bar uh, in Dallas for a while. It opened up in 2019,
Oh.
and it didn't survive the
Mm.
pandemic. But for the 2 years that we were open, well, for 16 months of that, I hosted an open mic that was basically identical to the one we do at the Blue Light in Lubbock. Uh, Basically, just I want to do the same thing that was done for me and open that stage, give that opportunity. There's a couple young guys that I met there that I'm still in contact with. They jokingly call me their songwriter dad, because as I've been out here doing this for a while and grinding away and
Hmm.
making all the mistakes and stuff, maybe they can learn from my mistakes and not have to make them themselves. So
That's
just
right, right.
a lot of those young folks, I definitely, it's it it's interesting. We live in an interesting time. There's so much music happening. There's so much new music happening. I have a
Yes.
hard time keeping up with who's new, who's on the scene,
Hmm. Hmm.
who's been around even for a minute and is finally breaking through, things like that. I try to do the best I can, but at the same time, one thing that I do is just try to keep my ears and eyes open. You know, so much of it is just intersecting with these young people. I have a few that they open shows for me every once in a while,
Yeah.
and you know, um, I know I've run into artists when I'm trying to book shows that they don't necessarily want an opener at their shows,
Mhm.
just because they want to maybe protect their brand or however they look at it. But for me, man, the more the merrier. If we've got
That's
some
exactly
kid out
right.
there,
Yes.
there's some kid who's hungry and
Yes.
they're just itching to play. You can see the energy just kind of vibrating off of them. It's like, man, let the kid play.
For
I want
real.
to,
For real.
you
Yes.
never know. You never know.
That's
And
it. You never know. You never
yeah.
know.
And as good as I am and as good as all my peers and my friends are, and um, it's amazing because we we kind of know who are the established people in our scene, especially in Texas.
Yes.
We've all
Mhm.
like we were talking about the network so intertwined. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and you never know. There might be a really cool musician or even just person out there that they just need a shot. They just need a chance. So I'm big on that. Like I try to keep
Mhm.
my ears open, but gosh, there's so much that happens now.
It
I
does. Well,
saw a stat one time. What was it? There's let me see it. I think it's 100,000 new songs a day on Spotify.
whoa.
Yeah, 100,000 a day.
Oh, good
So
grief. Good grief.
trying to keep up with all the new stuff, man, I gotta
Well,
leave that to people like you who know a lot of artists.
It's a lot to keep up, and it was
Yeah.
one of the hardest things ever for me. But I had some health issues that happened in December. Well, I'll just be honest with you. Like December 17th, I had a stroke,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing
I'm
great. I
so
haven't
glad
had
you're
one.
here.
I am by the grace of God. God was with me in the prayers. It's a miracle. But
Awesome.
during that time, by the time I started trying to play catch up with the music, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I mean, I had a list this long. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
what we're talking about. I was looking at radio releases and who would release them and who's doing what, and it just, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it just keeps coming. It just keeps coming, and it's so good. It's all so good.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really interesting to me is even in the last what I've been doing this 13 years now. Um, I've talked with my friend Craig Vaughn, I should say, up in Amarillo at KPUR. And one thing we were talking about young people. One thing I kind of do is he's got like a weekly top 20 that he puts out, and I follow him, and so I just kind of I look at that 20,
Mhm.
and if there's names I don't know, there's usually, like I said, there's the people we know who've been grinding at this for a long time. But if there's new names, I'll try to look at those names. What's interesting to me is just it seems like the quality of debut music is increasing.
Yes, it is.
Um,
Yes.
even when I started trying to get a professional sounding recording, trying to get it out,
Mhm.
it was a little bit harder. But now that we've, 13 years on, it
I
seems
know.
like the
Yes,
ability
we've
to just
come
get
so
amazing
far.
things. Yeah,
Yes, come so far.
it's
Well,
incredible.
yes, yes. But gosh, it's just been amazing. And I know you've got a lot of shows coming up. You're going to be playing, I saw it, Outlaws and Legends, and then
Yeah,
Courtney Patton's Sunday Supper Club. So I would actually love to have you back on the podcast again as things
anytime.
progress, and especially if you do another album. But it's just been great having you. I love your work, love what you're
Thank
doing,
you.
and thank you so much for visiting with us. Zac Wilkerson, thank you.
You bet. Thanks, y'all.